Hello, happy iOS Tuesday. We are live. I have a guest on my channel, Azam. So I'm very excited to be here tonight with you, and I think we're gonna have a very interesting discussion. So definitely, if you were waiting for it, so now you can ask all the questions. And I see like people already like before the live stream, people already pulling in the chat saying looking forward to this interview, and I certainly looking forward to this interview as well, like because I think I have a very unique guest. And but why don't we start with you, Azim? How about you just introduce yourself, what you do, and let's go from there.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Eugene. So my name is Mohammad Azam. I go by Azam, just Azam, and I am currently located in Houston, Texas, where my full-time job is teaching at a coding bootcamp, and I've been developing iOS applications since 2010. But before that, I was doing a lot of Microsoft .NET development using C Sharp, ASP.NET, and all that kind of cool stuff.
Nice, nice. You have a very, very unique background. So let's start with your kind of origin story where you start doing iOS. How do you start doing iOS, and why iOS? Why no, like why not Android or like React Native or any other platform or technology?
Yes, in 2010, I was working for a company as a consultant, and one of the people who were with me, my colleague, he was a huge Apple fan. Like, if Apple will put out any content or any kind of a device, he would just immediately buy it the next day. And he told me about, like, hey, you can create apps, put it on the App Store, you can make money off of it. And I was not really interested until I hear that, okay, you can actually sell your apps and all that stuff. At that point, I don't think I even had an iPhone at that point. I was just using a dummy phone even in 2010. So, yeah, so on the spot, I purchased a MacBook Pro. It came with an iPod at that time in 2010. And I wrote my first app in 10 days, which was using, I believe, Cocoa. It was the iOS app. It was using Cocoa's 2D framework,
Mhm.
and I was able to earn at least like $1,000 or $2,000 within a month, not like within a day or anything. So it was able to pay off the price of the items that I bought or the hardware. And after
Mhm.
that, I was hooked. I created a lot of apps after that. My best-selling app was about the vegetable gardening app called Vegetable Tree, and I think it was also featured by Apple on multiple occasions back in 2012, 2013.
Nice,
Yeah,
nice. Yeah, like you certainly have a very, very unique background. And so, like, you started with Objective C, right? Like
yeah,
back then. And
yeah.
how was your transition to Swift?
I think since my background was already C sharp, and I was already doing JavaScript and C sharp, transitioning from Objective C to Swift was I mean, it was pretty painless. I mean, I think Swift is pretty much like any other programming language, like JavaScript or even C sharp or Java. So, Objective C, it was a little bit weird, but I
Hmm.
think I always try to relate Objective C with the JavaScript jQuery framework, which is also old in 2005 or something.
Hmm.
So I was able to think about that framework and how that framework, the whole syntax used to work, and I applied the same logic when I was doing Objective C. So language learning, at least for me, it was not really a big deal. I think it in 1 or 2 weeks I was pretty good at Objective C.
Okay, you mean
Mhm.
Swift.
Yeah, Swift. I mean Objective C and then Swift also. Yeah,
Inside Swift.
yeah.
Okay. Yeah, like I can certainly say that like Objective C is just weird
Hmm.
because before Swift I worked with Python, with a little bit with C sharp and Java. So per my experience, Swift um is a good combination between like Python and JavaScript, but you have types, so that was kind of nice for me.
Mhm.
But like Objective C, it's something it like they like the syntax and like the how the language works. It's just not how not how like other like
Yeah,
languages work. It's just like it's just weird.
it is weird.
So
Yeah.
yeah,
Yep.
I totally hear you on that. And so you said that you are currently teaching at the boot camp, right?
Yes, so I work full time for a bootcamp called Digital Crafts, and I teach full stack web development. So I don't really teach iOS. Well, actually, we don't really have any classes for iOS. Before joining Digital Craft, which was like 4 years ago or more than 4 years, I was teaching iOS development for a bootcamp called the Iron Yard.
Mm-hmm.
It's no longer there. Iron Yard is no longer available or is folded. But for the last 4.5 years, I have been teaching full stack web development. So that includes JavaScript, HTML, CSS, Node, Postgres, React, Redux. So all of the basically the server side as well as the client side.
Nice,
Yep.
nice. And why boot camp? What why did you decided like to go teaching versus like going to like I don't know a FANG company or like a startup or starting your own product? Why boot
Mhm.
camp?
I think I've been working on these different companies for a very long time. I started working probably around like 2005 and working for different companies till 2016. Um, it was good. I mean, I learned a lot, obviously. We're working with different clients, usually oil and base, energy companies, retail companies. But for me, teaching has always been the number one thing because it's just such a noble kind of a profession that you are actually helping people to, to change their family tree, to basically, find new jobs. And for me, at least, it's the best feeling is whenever my students will get a new job or they land a new job and they're coming from very different backgrounds, so they don't have any CS degree, or
Mhm.
sometimes they don't even have a degree. So it's always good to see, okay, this person, yeah, they got a job, this is really good, and they're going to change, it's going to change their complete family tree, not only for themselves but their kids and their,
Mhm.
the whole family. So that's always something that I never felt with working with big oil giants or big companies like retail companies. I just felt like, okay, we're doing something, and yeah, maybe the company will make a lot of money, but we don't really see any, you know, effect that we are doing on normal human lives. So that is a, I think, something that I really feel when I'm teaching.
Nice, nice. And I see other people joining our live stream. So, like, if you have any questions or thoughts, please share it with us. Um, and like, we would like to like answer your questions, and like, we certainly here for you. And also, like, do the YouTube things, like subscribe and share. And also, Azam, I think you have a YouTube channel too, right?
Yes, my channel name is Azam Sharp, and
Mm-hmm.
I post a lot of iOS development videos. Usually, I try to post one video a week, and yeah, so I've a lot of videos on Swift UI with core data. So I have a lot of stuff that is already there, and I'm always planning to add more new stuff. Yeah.
All right. I think I. Oh, oh. So I just found your like channel and it played in my headphones, so like hopefully did it like go here. But I'm sharing it with the chat. So like
Mhm.
this is your YouTube channel. So if you are here and if you haven't subscribed to like either my channel or Azam's channel, like go ahead and subscribe. Azam has a lot of really cool stuff, and I I look at your channel time to time, and what one thing that I noticed, like you always bring new technology. Like as soon as it was announced at WWDC, probably like a day later, or like as soon as you can, you probably already making a video about that topic. So like that is really cool. So like definitely do the YouTube things, and uh, so with like what challenges do you have working at the boot camp?
Yeah, that's an interesting question. Every boot camp, and I've been doing it for 4 years, and I've done maybe 11 or 12 cohorts, graduated over 200 students. So every cohort, every semester is very different. What I've found is I mean, you have to take care of the student not only technically, but also emotionally. And the challenges that I usually face are students, you know, you have to be present for them emotionally to take care of their needs. I mean, sometimes we always say that uh, teaching, I mean, when they're coming to the boot camp, we allow them to do something called pre-work, mean
Mm-hmm.
that, hey, it's boot camp is starting in a couple of months, so make sure that you read up what is Python or in JavaScript, make sure you know what GitHub is, make sure you have accounts. And the most challenging part are the students who don't do any of these things and who are like, well, we're just going to go to this magical boot camp and we're going to graduate in 16 weeks and we're going to become a developer. That it's not it's yeah, it doesn't work like that. It's like me going to a gym, taking a membership of a gym and paying like $100 a month, but never going to the gym, just
Mm-hmm.
sitting there, right? So you
Mm-hmm.
have to put in the work. And I think it's whoever, I mean, all the students who are successful in the boot camp, they are the one, they're putting in the hours, they're putting in the hard work and becoming curious about things. Hey, what's going to happen if I write this line? What's going to happen if I remove this line of code? What's going to happen if I do this or that? So definitely, if you don't have curiosity, or if you are not wired to do hard work, boot
Mm-hmm.
camp can become very, very challenging because it's very fast paced, and like every day you're learning some new things. So whenever people are coming to boot camp, it is always a good idea to brush up on a little bit of coding and all the pre-work that the boot camp is providing you.
Yeah, and we have a question. So
Mhm.
Franklin is asking, Azam, are you teaching Swift UI at the boot camp?
So actually I don't teach iOS development at all. I teach full stack web development, which is obviously completely different. I know
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of weird because most of the stuff I do is iOS, but no, I mean I teach web development, which means like Node and uh, React and Redux and the whole backend databases and all that stuff. Yeah.
So, if there is someone out there trying to break into tech, um, in what like situation would you advise, or like either like break into tech or maybe break into new technology? Like like do you think is more um, not qualified but suited for a boot camp versus
Mm.
self-taught versus CS degree? So like
Oh.
if you
Mhm.
were like to like because like you there are different paths that
Yeah.
you can take in tech. So you can go like you can learn everything yourself.
Mhm.
You can go to a boot camp, you can go to and earn CS degree. So who would you recommend to go to the boot camp?
So starting with, and that's an interesting question because that's the same question I'm talking about next week for Twitter Spaces, that if the CS degree is even worth going into to becoming a developer. Um, if Well, for the CS degree, and I have a CS degree, by the way. I mean, I've been to university for 4 years and I got the CS degree. But I think the most important question, or the most important challenge for other people, will be that if you are going to get a CS degree, which is perfectly fine, are you going to incur a huge amount of debt, 80 to $100,000 for that degree, or are you just going to get some scholarships or work during the time that you're in college and graduate debt free? So this is the most important question. But because if you're going to college for a CS degree and you're going to incur or have a debt of 80,000, 60,000, then maybe that's not the best way to get that education. Maybe you can try another thing called boot camp. Now, boot camp cost a tenth of the amount of a CS degree and 100th of the amount of the time that it will take you to graduate, 16 weeks versus 4 years. So definitely your investment will pay off a little bit more in terms of time as well as money. But again, boot camps are fast, and boot camps are not going to provide you the college experience that you're looking for. If you are just there for the college experience and parties and all that stuff, so maybe boot camp is not a good idea. Now, if you're
Okay.
like, I can't afford a boot camp,
Mhm.
then yes, you can definitely go the self-taught route. But in those cases, you have to have a I mean, you have to be very persistent, consistent, and you have to have a mindset of like very hard work and not giving up, because when you're learning something, you are going to face the barriers and the walls. And usually at that point, people just give up. So if you're one of those people who are just stuck with the problem, and you just keep working, keep working, keep working until you solve it, then maybe you can also try the self-taught route. That's perfectly fine, by reading books and watching YouTube videos. That is, that is perfectly fine too.
Yeah. So Franklin is asking, will you
Mhm.
be pushing your current Twitter Spaces series as a podcast?
I don't have any podcast network or anything, but I do plan to, at least, I don't have the time today, but I do plan to download the audio and then upload it on YouTube as a just a audio kind of recording. But the audio recording was already shared on Twitter for today's topic. There was a topic today which was server driven UI, so that is already shared. And for the next week, I'll be talking about CS degree, is it worth it? And the recording will be shared on Twitter also. So if you're not able to make it, you can always catch the recording.
Sounds good. And another question. So let's say, which specialties in software development would you recommend to go for a bootcamp? Because um, I think, and I
Mhm.
might be wrong, boot camps are more suitable for um, mostly like front end development, like web development or full stack development, iOS development, Android developer development, like mobile development, something that you can see easily. And I think it's going to be rather challenging to um, teach a person who doesn't have CS fundamentals stuff like machine learning and
Mhm.
natural speech processing and like really complex stuff, or developing other programming languages, because there's definitely like software developers who are working on new programming languages as we speak. And I
Mhm.
think certain things you can't just learn at the boot camp. What are your thoughts
Mhm.
on that?
Yeah, what I have seen is when I was teaching at the Iron Yard, I was teaching iOS development, and I taught like 4 or 5 semesters over there. But then they basically killed the iOS program. They pulled the plug on the iOS, and the reason was that not many people were enrolling to learn native iOS development.
Mm-hmm.
And we found out later that it's because there are not many jobs for junior iOS developers. Because if you have a large company, probably you're going to hire 1 or 2 iOS developers and 1 or 2 Android developers. And those 1 or 2 developers will be probably senior or intermediate or higher level. So you're not going to hire junior developers to do the work. On the same point, you will end up hiring more web developers, because website is still, a lot of people that build the websites, and for that, the demand is pretty much even throughout US at least. So that's why we are teaching. Uh, well, we don't teach iOS. We only teach web development per se. So I think for data science, again, that has to be researched, that probably data science would be a good candidate for a more senior level position rather than a junior. Now, I'm not saying that if you did data science in a boot camp, you're not going to able to get the job, but you have to look at the job market and see that if those positions for a data science scientist requires some sort of a degree, some sort of experience level of 3 to 5 to 6 to 10 years, or senior level or a junior level. So web development, I think, is one of those things where junior developers can definitely, they can get jobs much more easily, because if they are not working remotely, then even then it is kind of like evenly spread out into different states of the US. But if you're doing iOS development, you are going to have a tough time finding a iOS job on the site, not remote, but on the site, depending on where you live. But now everything is working remotely, or everyone is probably mostly remote. So your chances of finding might be a little bit higher as compared to like a couple of years ago.
Yeah, like I think so. And what I'm seeing on the market right now, it seems like mobile development and especially iOS development and native iOS development definitely gained more popularity
Hmm.
here recently. And like obviously I can foresee the future, but um, I think that might be reasonable for boot camps to reopen iOS programs, because with the higher demand, and especially when you have a lot of new companies and startups, like they might be interested in hiring bootcamp graduates for
Hmm.
like junior level developer, or like at certain companies, like at the smaller company, they may not even have like levels necessarily, but like they have a list of requirements. Okay, we need to build like a simple app, like MVP, minimum viable product. So,
Hmm.
and they're looking for like a developer
Yeah.
who can do it. And I
Yeah.
think bootcamp graduates, like if they put in a lot of work and effort and do the whole work and study, because I think it's important to, like, man, at least for me, it's I think it's like no matter which route you take, like CS degree or boot camp or self-taught, you are self-taught anyway, because you have
Hmm.
to teach yourself how to code. Like with boot camp you have more materials, but
Hmm.
like with like just with the with iOS development, how things are, like you have to look up things like constantly, and like yes, it is important to follow the um curriculum, but also like you have to stay up to date with like iOS development and things like that.
Absolutely, yeah. And I think with the with you said, like with everyone or most of the people hopefully now going remote, this may open the door for much bigger market for iOS developers. Because when I was teaching, it was more of a not a remote kind of thing. It was I have to go to office and teach over there, and most of the students were actually living in Houston, Texas. But even after graduating, and they were really good students, they were not able to find any jobs in Houston, Texas, because there are not many jobs for native iOS developers at that time, at least. So most of them have to wait like a long time or to change cities to be able to land those jobs. But now everything remote, maybe their chances will be much higher.
Okay, yeah, like I agree with you. And so let's say if an iOS developer has passion for teaching
Mhm.
and would like to like open a boot camp, which is totally, I think it's a totally like we can do a separate live stream on how to open boot camp, because it's the whole different topic. So like how would you compare income from like teaching and having boot camp and like content creation versus working at the big company? Is it worth it? Like because like we like I think my uh question would be like, can I make the same amount of money as I'm making at big tech?
Hmm.
Or like will I suffer financially, or do I have to like work at two, like at a couple of
Hmm.
boot camps, or like maybe have a side hustle on the side? So what do you think in terms of profitability, like which is more profitable, like doing like a boot camp or like working at the company, or they can be both profitable?
I think they can be equally depending on which bootcamp you are working. The bootcamp salaries, depending on your experience, they usually pay you a senior or advanced developer salary. So and you, I mean, depending on the boot camp again that you work, they also give you a little bit more time off, a little bit longer time off, because after 16 weeks of teaching, you're completely like done at that point. So they give you a little bit more time off, so you can read about more stuff. You can maybe attend conferences and read more books about it, or maybe just a time off for you to enjoy and go somewhere. So if we take all of that into account, it becomes kind of like a equal thing if you're working
Mm-hmm.
for larger company or not. Now, obviously, if you are working for Google or you're working for Facebook or an Apple, they might pay you a lot more money, obviously. But most of these companies will also require you that you are on site in, in California.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to kind of calculate that the cost of living in California is way too high as
Mm-hmm.
compared to if I work remotely on a much less expensive city like Houston or Dallas or San Antonio or anything on the south part. Um, so you have to take into account those kind of things. So even though I think I was having a discussion with someone else also, that even though the salaries are, well, as compared to California, the salaries are lower, but
Mm-hmm.
our expenses over here are also much lower as compared to California. Yeah.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
if somebody wants to get into like teaching at the boot camp, maybe like either full time or part time or to like kind of on the side, what steps can they take and
Hmm.
how to get into teaching at the boot camp?
I think you should definitely start with, uh, and we're just saying, I mean, we're assuming that it can be a remote boot camp, but it can also be an in-person boot camp. If it's an in-person boot camp, then you should be comfortable talking in front of people. So start with, creating projects or giving user group presentations in your local user groups or different conferences, so that you don't have any fear of speaking. Apart from that, I think the best way to learn something is to start teaching it, which means that you should put out some content like videos or articles or probably videos in which you're teaching something. And then you should watch out for the comments that are people able to understand what you're teaching or not, because it will be the same style that you're going to be carry over into the classroom. For in-person or remote classroom, you have to be very you know uh, patience. It will be like the very very important thing. I know that some people can get like uh, angry. I mean, instructors can get that thing like, oh, why can't you just understand this, or why can't you
Hmm.
do this and that. You have to understand from students point of view also that they are learning this for the first time, and the boot camp is fast paced. So you have to have compassion for them to help them out, uh, in a way that you're not kind of like hand holding, but you're giving them pointers that maybe there's something wrong with line number 23. I'm
Hmm.
not going to tell you what, but maybe there is something wrong with line number 23. So things like that, it some student may not like that, but you have to be a good teacher to make sure that uh, you know, you're providing help in a way that they will learn.
Awesome. And Franklin asks, how do you track and plan all the educational content you put out, like courses, books, YouTube, speaking, Twitter?
Um, I usually, when I'm either reading some article or I am reading a book and I find something interesting, um, for tracking itself, the content, sometimes I use Trello, but most of the time it's just these plain old post-it notes that I use. They're everywhere on my desk.
Hmm.
Um, for educational content, I think for my Udemy courses, which is a big part of my what I do, for my Udemy courses, I usually create content on the stuff that I like to dive into further. Which, like right now, I'm working on a course for Mac OS with SwiftUI, which
Hmm.
I'm still working on. It's taking me a little bit more time, but I wanted to learn Mac OS development using SwiftUI, so I'm creating a course on that. And after that, I will dive into some server-side Swift. Now, to separate the content from the course itself with the YouTube, sometime I will put some videos that are in the Udemy course on the YouTube channel. And then at the end of the video, I'll say that, hey, if you want the complete course, blah, 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 go to go to Udemy and buy the course. Um, so I mean, that's what usually happen. For the books, I don't really write that many books. I do have some books in plan. Book writing is just so hard. That's actually the most
Mhm.
hardest and hardest thing ever. So I'm still, I mean, in the process of writing a book about coding bootcamp and learning from a coding bootcamp, what to see in a bootcamp, how to select a bootcamp, different kind of bootcamps. When you're in the bootcamp, what you should do. When you're graduated from bootcamp, what you should do. So all of those different things, I'm still writing the book, but it's a very slow process. So I'm not sure when that book is going to be released, but I'm working on it very, very slowly. But to answer Franklin's question, if I'm using any software, I'm just going to say I'm using Post-it notes. That's what I use.
Nice. And for our audience,
Mhm,
there are many coding boot camps, and there are many success stories, and there are many horror stories, and there
mhm,
are many failures after boot camps that people usually don't like to share.
mhm,
How do you like? How would you choose the right coding boot camp? How do you know that that
mhm,
coding boot camp is right? Because you can spend like as a minimum
mhm.
like $5,000-$10,000, like it's on the very cheap end for
Yeah,
coding bootcamp, all the way to like 20-50K per coding bootcamp. And
mhm,
at the end, you may not land a job. And
yeah.
so how do you choose?
So choosing a bootcamp, I would start with the most important thing, or one of the most important thing about bootcamp are the instructors itself. So go to the bootcamp website, check out the instructors, check out if you can find out who will be teaching you in your semester if you enroll in, I don't know, May or February or March,
Mhm.
and try to do as much research as possible on that particular instructor. If the instructor has like 1 year of experience, then probably that's a pretty new person that is teaching, and I should go with a little bit more experienced person. So I would say 5, 6, 8, 10 years experience. That is something that you should be looking for, and at least 2 to 3 years of experience in teaching only, because teaching is more of an art. You can be the best developer in the world, but you will not know how to teach anything. So teaching and bootcamp are I mean, teaching and programming are very different things. So that's why it's a very rare kind of a combination, as we were talking about, that to find these instructors. Now, apart from that, it's always a good idea to, when you're researching, to look out for that the history of the instructor, that okay, this instructor has been doing iOS development for like 5 years, but before that this instructor was doing .NET development or
Mhm.
JavaScript development. Because when the instructor has a lot of experience, a lot of different technologies, then it plays a very important role in your actual lectures, actual teaching, because the instructor can always say that, well, once you learn it over here, you can apply it in Kotlin, you can apply it in Java and the JavaScript. So that matters a lot, because it will give you more confidence to learn those things and to apply those concepts in different programming languages. Apart from that, research some videos if the instructor has some videos online, some
Mhm.
courses online, so you know what the style is for how the instructor is actually teaching, and obviously reviews. So
Mhm.
coursereport.com is a great, or I think it's Course Report is a very good website where you can go and search for the coding bootcamp, and you can check out the reviews of that particular bootcamp, what they are like, what other students are about what saying. Sometimes it's also useful to go on LinkedIn and search for whatever the company name is, like Digital Crafts, and you
Mhm.
will get to see a lot of alumni, and you can ask questions like what are their views on the bootcamp when they attended a particular bootcamp. So all of those things are very, very important. The curriculum, meaning the syllabus, what you will be covering, definitely ask for the syllabus, what they are covering, and then try to see. I mean, obviously, if you don't have any idea what you're getting into, try to get another developer to look at the syllabus to see if it's up to date or not. Like if you're teaching like VB script, I don't think anybody will be, but if you're teaching VB script, that means that okay, this syllabus is like super old,
Mhm.
so you should be teaching something new. Um, but yeah, those are the main things. Apart from the price, and price can range from anywhere from $6,000 to even like $20,000 for a coding bootcamp, which is still cheaper than going to the college or going to the university. So those are the important things when you're choosing a bootcamp. Make sure you do a research on your instructor uh, that are hired by the company, by the bootcamp to teach, because those will be that will be the foundation block for your learning.
Nice, nice. Yeah, thank you for that. And per your experience, not
Hmm.
necessarily for your boot camp, but
Hmm.
like per your experience teaching at the boot camp, what is the ratio success, people who find jobs and found careers, whatever it might be,
Hmm.
versus people who just didn't make it to like in tech and
Hmm.
like had to do something else?
I mean, I think I've read for my own company. I think, and I might be. It's not. It might not be 100% what like the number, but I think I've seen it higher than like 85% or even like 90% in some cases. That students who graduate from our boot camp. I mean, it might be different for other boot camps also, but are able to find jobs in the next 3 months. I was actually reading it's a very good question because I was reading a research by some independent company, and they were researching that how many people who graduated from these big giant universities like MIT and Stanford and all that stuff versus people who went to a boot camp, CS boot camp, got hired by FANG companies like Facebook and Apple and Amazon and Microsoft.
Hmm.
And in the end, they found out that people who graduated from boot camps were pretty much equal, neck to neck, with the same people who got hired from these Ivy League schools. So you can now see the difference that, I mean, if you're going to these MIT or Stanford and you're not on scholarship, I mean, you might be end up like 4 years and I don't even know, hundreds and thousands of dollars in debt. But you can go to a great boot camp and get the same education, and your chances of probability of landing a job are in the FANG companies is exactly the same as someone who went to a elite Ivy League school. So
Nice.
that was interesting research. Yeah.
Nice. And also, like, I think another thing that I find interesting sometimes, not all the time,
Mhm.
people from bootcamp, they might go for like React developer development, and they may land a totally different job in tech. Like, um, one like a few examples that I've seen, like one person went to a coding bootcamp for React, and they landed a job as a Flutter developer.
Mhm.
Like they didn't know anything about Flutter, but like they learned on the job, and like they like Flutter, and now they're considering like native iOS development, or like they finished like I don't know like iOS development
Mhm.
bootcamp, and they landed a job as a QA engineer or test automation engineer in mobile space,
Yeah.
where like my example, like a long time ago, I went to like a bootcamp for QA, and I didn't even graduate. I found a job like 3 months in the program, and then like just
Mhm.
started working. But like I decided to do like iOS development because like that was just more interesting to me. So like do you see a lot of that where people might start like went for coding bootcamp for one specialty and learned something not necessarily totally different, but like something like rather surprising that you didn't expect them to land?
I don't really, yeah, I mean, it's not that many stories that I hear from my students. I mean, usually when they are learning something, then they will land a job based on the context of what they have learned. But I think one of the important things, which I also tell my students, is that it's fine that you are the best thing that you're learning over here is you're learning to learn. So once you go through this and all of that stuff, then you can pick up anything you want. If you have never done Flutter and you have done React, you will find a lot of similarities between the two frameworks, and you can just jump into different things. And I think that's one of the traits of a good instructor or a good teacher, that that person, the instructor, will be able to always tell you that, oh, you're going to learn Swift UI. Well, it's kind of like React, and that's kind of like React Native, and that's kind of like Flutter. So if the instructor doesn't know any of those things, then they can never make that particular relation. And that, I think, also goes in the mind of students when they're learning React or React Native, and somebody asks them to do Flutter. They're always in the back of their mind is like, oh, it's kind of like React Native. So Flutter is kind of like React Native. So that kind of works in that favor also. Yeah.
Yeah. And Franklin asks an interesting question. Is it easy to content switch, like teaching multiple languages? Does it affect your productivity?
Not necessarily. I mean, there are some time, and pretty much I think I do it in every class. Sometime I start writing like print instead of console or log in JavaScript. But apart from that, not really, doesn't really affect my productivity. Actually, learning multiple language has always given me a little bit more, uh, much better idea of how different things can be done in Swift and Swift UI. And sometimes I take stuff from Flutter and try to implement it in Swift UI. So I think learning at least one language a year is always going to be beneficial, even though you're not using it. But no, from context switching point of view, nah, I don't really find that it affects my productivity.
Nice. So we have to wrap up our
Mhm.
live stream. So before we go, any advice for our listeners and people who are watching?
Yeah, my advice is just, I mean, if you're getting into iOS development, um, pick up a book, start listening, completely try to immerse yourself into that world. I mean, we have a great community, great Twitter community online, and we have iOS Dev Happy Hour also like every month. And I mean, so definitely try to immerse yourself, learn as much as you can. If you have any questions, there's don't hesitate to post it on Stack Overflow, ask for help. That's perfectly fine. And just keep learning, because every year the technology kind of changes, new APIs comes out, and that's the fun part of this job.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mhm.
Well, Azam, huge thank you for being here on the channel and on my live stream. Thank you so much. I think we had a very productive discussion, and I think it's really important to like kind of get the information from a person who teaches like bootcamp. I definitely learn a lot. So, and like, I really appreciate your very, very unique experience and contribution.
Thank you so much, Eugene. Thanks for having me. Fun.
Yeah, thank you. Well, I will see y'all in the next video, and bye, y'all.